If you like our content, please like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get alerts when we introduce new videos.
In this brief demo, we're going to take a look at onboarding switches to various Ruckus management platforms. We'll first begin by taking a look at the process to add switches into SmartZone. We're logged into SmartZone here, and we are currently under the switch view, and as you can see, we have no switches that are currently being managed by this instance. It is a simple process to get switches onboarded within SmartZone. You just have to make sure that your firmware for the switch is meeting the requirements for the version of SmartZone you're running. Please refer to documentation for the version that you are running so that you can make sure your switches are running that particular code. I need to console into my switch and take a look at it here, so I'm going to go ahead and drag that window over. I've already logged into the switch, but I'm going to run the show version command. We can see that we're running 8095BA as my code level. This version of firmware is a version that is able to be managed by SmartZone. So again, check your release, make sure you've got the appropriate firmware, and you can proceed with the following. The first thing I'm going to do is actually run a show manager status. So show manager command is kind of telling you what the status is for any of the SmartZone or cloud managed abilities for the switch, and we can see right now it is operationally disabled. It is not configured to do anything. So right now it's just all showing disabled, but we're going to move into config mode, and we're going to run the manager active list, and then we're going to point it to our SmartZone controller at 192.168.1.51, and I'm going to go ahead and enter that command in. We can then again run the show manager status command, and we should see now that we are enabled and we have a server that we're going to try to connect to. The query is in progress. So I'm going to give this a few minutes for it to set up the communication, and we'll check back in just a moment. While we're waiting on that, let's flip back over to SmartZone and refresh the view here and see what we come up with. I'm going to refresh and see if we see any devices hit staging, and we do. So this switch is showing it's offline, and it is reporting the MAC address, and it currently doesn't have a config or show any of the port information. But what we can do at this point, although it says it's offline, really what that means is it's pending joining a domain. So we're going to go ahead and move this switch to a domain. So we'll select the switch, choose move, and I am going to throw it into my switch group here. I'm going to I have a group called newly onboarded switches that I'm going to add it to. So I'm selecting that, and I'm choosing OK. So we can see that the message here is indicating that it could take some time for the switch to be moved into this group, and if firmware needs to be upgraded for that move to occur, it will happen based upon what the group settings are. So I'm going to go ahead and choose yes here, and we can see now that it's no longer in the staging group, but it is in the team domain group. So I am going to flip back to my putty window here, and let's rerun that status command and see if, okay, we're still saying it's in progress. So I'm going to wait just a few minutes now that we've moved this switch into that switch group and see what result we get once it is finished doing the config. Now that we've waited a few moments, let us rerun this command, at least from a CLI perspective, and see what we've got. So, okay, so we can see that this status command now is showing that it is connected, and it is showing some information about the SSH tunnel that is used to create this connection between the switch and SmartZone. If we flip back over to SmartZone and refresh this, actually just refresh the whole page, we should be able to see some additional detail about the device. Okay, so now we're seeing the device itself, we're seeing how many ports it has, the status of those ports, even some PoE utilization information about what power it may be providing to other ports and things. So at this point, this switch is within management control of SmartZone. So this is what we need to do. You should be able to follow these same steps to onboard your switch. Next, we're going to outline the process to onboard your switch to the RUCKUS Cloud. So I am logged into my ruckus.cloud account, and as you can see, I don't have any devices in this particular instance. So we're looking to add a switch. I am going to drill down under the switch category, and I am going to select the add switch hyperlink. So you can see when we select to add a switch, we are being asked to specify which venue that we want to place this switch within. I already have a venue created here for my home network, so it is choosing that by default. The next piece of information that you're going to need to add your switch into the cloud is the serial number of the switch itself. So I'm actually going to bring up the console for the switch, and I am going to run show version just to grab the serial number of this particular switch. So let me go ahead and do that, and then jump back over and paste that in. So it also says right underneath the serial number here, an important note: switch must be running fast iron version 8090D UFI router image or later, and must be in factory default state. So if your switch is running switch code, it will actually not only be defaulted, but it will actually switch to router code once you've added it to the cloud. So any configurations that you have, you need to make sure you back them up. You need to make sure your configurations are valid for router code, and you can kind of convert them into the cloud. You'll have to go into the cloud and set up the switch group appropriately, so that the configurations that are pushed once it's in the cloud are what you had previously. So if you click on the README link here, it's basically giving you more information about that. It's saying switch with existing config. If the switch has existing config, use the erase start command followed by a reboot to reset the switch. That's not necessary completely. It does make the process more seamless, because if you do the erase start, it's got the manager commands needed to just connect into the cloud without you needing to do anything else. But it's not a hard prerequisite. If you put in the manager commands manually, you can still get the switch into the cloud. So it's talking about how, showing you how you do the factory default or upgrade the switch if you don't meet the cloud code requirements. So you're going to want to check this when you go to add your switches into the cloud. As the cloud releases get updated, the requirements get updated. So what I'm showing here might be outdated if you are just now looking to do this months down the line. So I know that my switch is already running router code, and I already meet the requirements, so I'm good. So I don't need to do anything else here. And then the next option is how we want to add it. So as a standalone switch or as a member in a stack. This is a standalone switch, and it is a RUCKUS 7150 C12. So that's fine for me. I don't need to name it whatever you want. So once that's all done, I'm going to go ahead and click create, and we will see that it has now never contacted the cloud. So now what we need to do, since my switch isn't in the 100% defaulted state, I need to go over to that and run the manager activate command, just so I can make sure that we start trying to contact the cloud. I am going to go ahead and pull that console back up, and we are going to take a look at first the show version. I'm sorry, nope, the show flash. So we are running router code in primary, switch code in secondary, but I am running the router version. If I do a show run, you can see that pretty close to default. Everything's being learned dynamically. We've got the default route that's dynamically learned. We've got a default address on my interface 121. So another interesting caveat or something that we need to point out here, if you're doing DHCP, everything will continue to work as normal. If you don't have access to a DHCP server and you're needing to add your switch into the cloud, there is a manager network config command. I'll go ahead and run it here, but I'm not going to complete the wizard. So running the manager network config command allows you to specify what a static IP address would look like once the device has been joined into the cloud. So if you need to set the IP address, you can do that with the manager network config. It's in the documentation on how to do that. So if you need to do that, go ahead and follow that. But mine's all DHCP, so I think I'm ready to roll here. So the next command that I need to run is manager registrar. So this will actually be in the config if you do an erase start. It's part of the config by default. I had taken it out just to show you that you could have a non-default config and still get your switch into the cloud. So adding manager registrar will start the process. So if we rerun show manager status, let me try that again. Show manager status. We now see that we are enabled. We see the list of cloud resources that we're going to connect with, and we can see that we are in progress. So this is actually going to take some time to complete. I'm going to go ahead and let this run, and we will come back and take a look at the device once it has fully joined the cloud. All right, so let's take a look here and see what we've got. I think it is done reloading from the onboarding. Let's go back and refresh the RUCKUS Cloud page and see what we've got here in terms of a status update. All right, so you see we're operational completely. Going back into this, I need to log in here. And to log in, we actually have a different password. So give me 1 second. I keep getting the TFTP stuff. Okay, so it's going to be admin to log in, but the password is actually something that is found in the venue settings. So I'm going to go into the venue settings. I'm going to go into the switch settings, and we can see we've got the admin password listed here. So I'm going to copy that, jump back over into this, paste that, and hit enter. So here we are. I am now in the switch, and we're just going to look at the running config. So one of the things that it will do is actually create a VE1 interface by default and put your DHCP assigned address on that. So that's a little bit different than what we had previously with the config that we were running. We just had the IP address right there on the interface itself, but now it is on a VE. This is all detailed in the README that we had talked about, and again, we mentioned the manager network config command. If you need to define the static address, that can be done here. So at this point, our device is being managed as I expect. So we have a switch in here. We can go ahead and do all the configurations that we need to do through the cloud, and the device is able to be managed that way. So hopefully you can follow these same steps to get your device within the cloud. Be sure to read the updated documentation to make sure you're meeting the prerequisites that are required. In this last section, we will briefly show the process of adding switches to RUCKUS Unleashed. Here I am logged into my Unleashed network, and as you can see, I currently have one switch that is already being managed by this platform. I'm going to expand that so we can take a look. We're going to add another switch, and there are two ways that you can do this. The first way is by clicking the Add button, typing in the IP address of the switch that you want to add, and putting in the username and password. And then selecting Add. So as long as this switch meets the firmware requirement for your Unleashed version, you should be able to pull that in. So it'll sit here and say connecting. It'll take a few moments for that to occur. We'll come back and check on that in just a moment. The other way to add a switch is by LLDP discovery. So if we go under Admin and Services, System Info, there is a switch approval toggle. By default it is disabled, that will automatically approve all join requests from switches. So if your switch is directly connected, or your master AP is connected to the switch that you are trying to discover or connect to, it can be discovered via LLDP, and if this automatic approval is enabled, it will automatically just join the Unleashed network. Otherwise, if the automatic approval is not enabled, it will come in and ask for approval. You'll see it show up in the list of switches and you will have to approve it. So we'll wait a few more moments for the switch just so we can show that it does connect in and what we can see once it finally has. All right, so it has joined into the management platform, and we can see it listed here as the second switch. So Unleashed is a management platform that allows you to look at the inner workings of the switch to tell what's kind of going on from a UI perspective. So I can select the new switch that we just added, and I can see we're connected on one port. We're not doing any PoE on this switch at all, but this is a read-only platform, so we're able to get some information. I'll switch back over to my other switch that maybe has some additional data in it, so we can see more of what the PoE budget is, which ports are connected, and what the status of each of these ports are, how much traffic is going through each of these ports, what VLANs, what is the specific PoE usage and things. What we're not able to do with Unleashed is actually configure switches. So if you're looking to configure switches, you're going to be wanting to use Cloud, you're going to be wanting to use SmartZone, but if you just need to have visibility into your switch from a read-only perspective, Unleashed is certainly something that you can utilize. So hopefully you can use these steps to add switches into your Unleashed network. Just make sure that you are checking the latest version of your release notes to verify you're meeting the requirements in terms of firmware for your switch. Thanks for watching, and we hope you can join us for future video demos.